Minister, can I talk to you?
Yes, sir.
What are you doing out here today?
Following in the finest tradition of those like Dr. King, who believe or who said that a threat to justice, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I firmly believe that. It's not just a slogan, I believe it. And the grossest injustice is being done and has been done since 1948 to the Palestinian people who were forced to scatter all over. Now, this tragedy where you have all those people trapped and hemmed in, where you bomb the people who don't have a navy, they don't have an air force, they don't have army, they are defenseless. And for the world to stand by and watch that happen and not say anything is the greatest tragedy. And I'm not going to be part of that tragedy. So I had to be here.
So what is the tragedy that's going on today, and where is it happening?
Well, the particular tragedy is in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. That's particular, but the greater tragedy is that the rest of the world goes about its business and doesn't say anything. That's the greatest tragedy, because that gives a green light. The government of America gave the green light, the Bush administration, because Israel would not have done that. As a matter of fact, Israel would not be able to do that without the green light of America. So it's actually done in our name. It's the government of the United States. I hope that the new government that came in talking about change, and the change that has to take place is not just the change here, but it's the change in American foreign policy. So I hope that the new government is going to honor the change that people are asking for. And that change has to include justice for Palestinians. And the UN has to be unrestrained in carrying out the wishes of all of the American administrations, Democrats and Republicans. It's not just Republicans. All American administrations have been compliant in what's going on. And the number one culprit is the American press. The American press, who not only hides the truth, but who makes sure that people in this country don't understand what's going on. They stand between what's happening there and the American people to make sure that American people. So it's the American press that has to really be indicted. Really be indicted.
So who is the American press? And how come they're not speaking out for us?
Because we're talking about CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, all of them are controlled. They are lapdogs for the controlling interests in the government, and that is the multinational corporations, and especially AIPAC. AIPAC and all.
Who is AIPAC? What does that stand for?
Well, I don't remember exactly.
American Israeli political
action, right? That has this stranglehold on Congress, on state governments, city governments, and especially the black leadership, the civil rights leadership, who depends on the contributions from philanthropic corporations. And so these various groups have their hands on the spigot in terms of who gets money and who doesn't. So the only two people I can think of who will speak out forcefully on this is, well, maybe about three. Jesse Jackson will, of course, Andy Young got ran out of the UN because he met with the Palestinians. But Minister Farrakhan is not afraid. The actor Harry Belafonte is not afraid. But everybody else.
How about Cynthia McKinney?
Oh, listen, they don't make them like that. This is probably the bravest person who's ever been elected to Congress in the history of the United States. Certainly, to my memory, one of them, and maybe there's somebody else. But she, right now, she's in the Middle East. She tried to, I think they tried to take supplies to the West Bank, and they were rammed. The boat they were on was rammed by an Israeli warship, and they were almost killed. They were rescued, I think, by Syria, Lebanon. Okay, but Cynthia McKinney, who was making a career representing us in Congress, put that career on the line. And of course, the forces came after her. We didn't really protect her, and she got driven out of Congress.
By who?
By AIPAC, the Democratic Party, all of them in collusion. People don't realize the power that these small groups of people have. Because they control the press. If you come out and you try to talk about what's happening in the Middle East in a balanced way, then you will get bad press. The press will come down on you, and they will say that you're anti-Semitic. That's the thing they use all the time. They keep that stick, and so they keep people from honestly discussing in public. Just like Jimmy Carter, who waited until he got out of office, he had to really tell the truth. And he says that privately, people in the State Department, people in government will agree that American foreign policy is being held hostage by Israel. They'll agree to that, but publicly they won't utter a word. That's power, mister, that's power for a small group of people. But they are strategically situated in universities, with the press, in banking, and people don't want to talk about that. People don't want to get hit with the anti-Semitic stick, and only the very brave people will come up and talk about that. And really, America and American foreign policy is being held hostage. Sometimes you don't know if it's the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail, because even when the policy on its face is wrong-headed, how can you justify the so-called response of the Israeli government to a few rockets that don't hit anybody? That's like if I'm your neighbor and I'm urinating over your fence. You take your pickup truck and you run through my house, through the dining room when I'm having dinner because I was peeing over your fence. That doesn't make sense. Nobody can justify that. But the press comes out and they use, when they say Hamas, they say terrorism. But they never talk about Iran. They never talk about the Jewish so-called resistance organization before 1948 that bombed and did all of those things, bombed the British. They don't talk about that. So when they use that one word, terrorism, and they connect it with a name, then that's supposed to explain everything in the world to you. And so in my list of culprits, I say number one, those organizations like AIPAC, number one. Number two, the American press. Right behind them is the American government, all government officials. Behind them are social and civic organizations who don't have the courage to stand up and tell the truth. They don't, and especially ours. We ought to know better. We ought to know better. If Dr. King were alive and in Houston, he would be right out here today. He would be right here. And all of those people who are going to be using his name in January, they're going to be using his name, they're going to be invoking his memory, should never use his name because they're cowards. And one thing that Dr. King was not, I promise you, he was not a coward. He was not a coward.
Great. Thank you so much for being out here today.
Okay.